He's coming.
Hello everyone, how are you all this evening? Thank you so much for staying behind after spoiling this evening. It's lovely to have such a brilliant turnout yesterday, lovely turnout for the Postshow today. So first referendum joke done, boom. So hello, my name is Sunniva, I am the engagement assistant here at the Traverse. So first of all, I'd just like to introduce you to the members of the panel we have this evening. So first of all, we have Orla O'Loughlin, who is the Director of Spoiling and the Artistic Director of the Traverse as well. We also have Clements and Gabriel Quigley as well. So what we'll be doing this evening is it'll just be a kind of 20-minute or so post-show discussion. I'll get things started with a couple of questions to the guys, and then I'll kind of throw the forum open to everyone. Feel free to ask as you wish, and then we'll try and get everyone up to the bar or home to their beds within about 20 minutes or so. Depends what you want to do with your Friday night. I'm not judging. Brilliant. Okie dokie. So the first question we have is for Orla. And it's quite a big one, so I do apologise for starting off on a big foot. So, Spoiling was our festival, one of our main festival shows this year for the 2014 festival. So it was running during the Edinburgh Festival, which is a time when obviously there's a lot of artistic activity taking place, and then again during Referendum Week. So two very important times within our calendar when a lot of eyes are on us. Why did you choose to have Spoiling on our stage at that time?
Well, it was a play that when I first read it, it was irresistible, really. It was an irresistible piece of writing. First and foremost, because of the quality of the writing, apart from its subject matter, which was so of the time and so prescient. But the first thing that got me was it made me laugh, it moved me, it provoked me, it challenged me, and it was first a short piece of writing. It was a 20-minute piece of writing, and we put it in front of an audience just to try it out and see what people made of it. And the response last November was quite. You did the showing. You know, it wasn't finished. It was just trying it out in front of an audience, and the response was overwhelming. That's maybe the best word. It was overwhelming, and people kept asking me about that piece. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? And so we felt that we needed to do something with it. So we worked with the writer, and he extended it to the play you've seen tonight, which was 50 minutes. So, yeah, it was irresistible for those reasons. Going on the journey of the piece, having gone into rehearsal with it in July, the beginning of July, and now being here on September the 19th has been quite a thing too, that we didn't quite know how the play was going to change on a daily basis depending on what was in the news, who'd said what. It played in London for just over 2 weeks between the festival. Different critics from different parts of the world, what they made of it. So it has the play continues to evolve and change depending on where it is, what day of the week it is.
Yeah. You got a whole new show tonight.
Yeah.
You really did.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I said it to Gabe when I met her just before now, was I didn't know if people would want to come out tonight. I wasn't sure if we'd have an audience tonight, and I'm delighted that we had a full house.
Yes, thank you.
And it was the same last night. You know, I was delighted that people just wanted to gather, almost regardless of the politics. You know, that if we felt last night the place was packed when I left here at 1:00. That there was just a sense that people just wanted to kind of just be in the room together, have a think. Sorry, that was probably a bit more than you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you so much. Amazing. So moving on to Richard and Gabe, as kind of Orla touched on there, you guys have been performing this since the beginning of August, literally as history was kind of unfolding in front of you, and also during the rehearsal process there was a lot of activity taking place at the same time. How has that been as actors, having this kind of world, the imagined stage world, and then this realistic world? Has that adapted your performances at all? Has it been difficult to focus? How have you found that process?
It hasn't adapted the performances because we've been directed in our performances to, hit where you need to hit to make the play as good as it could be. However, even while you're saying certain lines at certain times, they're landing for the audience in a very different way. every time, and so tonight was very different because the expectation has gone, but then other resonances came up. We were talking about it when we came off there.
Well, things like that people did not fall for Project Fear. I wonder, did I hear someone go, oh.
Yeah, and just the resonance of Northern Ireland, the violence there that comes from politics.
The impact, just turning the news on to then hearing Northern Ireland, Wales, Northern Ireland and Wales specifically being mentioned for the first time in a long time, in terms of the impact that all of this is going to have on the rest of us. I don't live in Scotland; I live in Belfast, and it's just as Gabe says, it has changed significantly. I mean, back when we did it in the festival, the no vote was ahead fairly strongly. People were coming in, resigning themselves maybe to that fact and enjoying the drama of the piece.
Just enjoying the drama and the sort of poignant sadness about, what could have been, and now it's a whole different thing tonight. Of it's definitely.
In London again, it changed dramatically. And that last week, we were down in London for about 2.5 weeks, and in the last week there was a real blanket media coverage and people starting to wake up to what was happening down there.
It was very quiet reaction at first in London, I think, because genuinely a lot of people didn't really know that much about what was going on, and as Orla said, it was a sort of a teaching exercise initially, sort of informing them about what's been going on up here, and then when the poll came out where the Yes campaign suddenly had a lead overnight, suddenly audiences were, what's happening?
I mean, that thought of talking about the idea of settlement talks for the first time, what that might entail, and it really piqued people's interest.
So.
And do you think that's been something that's been, I think it's a really interesting play, and it's a Northern Irish writer that we had on our stage during the festival speaking about this issue. Do you think that's been something that's pulled in people as well, that it kind of does represent a whole UK from this kind of Scottish standpoint?
I think if he had put 2 Scottish characters on the stage, it would have had a very different feel, undoubtedly. I think all that emotional and political baggage that Mark Henderson brings from the bad old days of pre- and post-referendum Stormont really do fuel the current argument that we're all having, if maybe it hasn't in the last couple of weeks. So it's an ongoing debate, and even when this show is long gone and we finish it tomorrow night, we'll still be thinking about it for years to come.
And it was a question that we were asked a lot around the festival time. Are you a yes venue or are you a no venue? Is it a yes play, is it a no play? People wanting that answer. I was asked that question every time I was interviewed about our programme in general, about the Traverse in general, and specifically about this play. And to go back to your initial question about one of the reasons that I wanted to programme it, I thought it was an important piece of writing, was I didn't feel it was a tub-thumping play. I felt it had, because it was from a Northern Irish writer who'd been through a referendum himself in the north of Ireland, and coming here, that it was more complex than that. And it starts with a question, it ends with a question. Now, different reviewers and different audience members have seen it as very different plays. People have taken from it that it's a very yes play, or it was booked by somebody who thought it was a no play, and then came to see it and said, oh no, I'm sure it is.
And obviously in London, a lot, obviously majority sympathisers were coming, and they were like, yeah, it's for me as well, so that's a good thing.
And especially that speech that Fiona gives towards the end, where she speaks about the Reavers. She begins with this should speak to the Reavers, and then she goes on this huge kind of lyrical, poetic journey of what John never really told us exactly what that was about, the writer, but we kind of took it as an inclusive, this is for everybody, this has to speak to everybody, historically, socially, politically, and it kind of goes beyond politics maybe for a minute, that this is about people. And so I think that's one of the things that really spoke to me about the play.
I was thinking actually on the way down tonight to the theatre about the ways in which the play might change and what might still be relevant or otherwise. And having heard, Alex Salmon talk tonight about, when he was stepping down, about the legacy of, people being re-energised by politics and young people entering the political debate and finding their political voice for the first time, that how much that Reavers speech that Orla was referring to really, chimes with that, So.
And there's been another question about whether after the 18th of September, whether this play would ever have a life. You know, there's been a lot of international interest in the play travelling, but a lot of people have been holding on to see. And it's just that great lesson that a play changes every day. You know, as the world goes on, as history moves on, as the months pass and the days pass, how we receive the information is different. So that was very interesting.
And interesting as well, the Northern Irish, when she goes on the attack in Northern Ireland, which people are always quite shocked by, I think it really takes a Northern Irish writer to write that. You know, we have a very self-deprecating way of looking at our problem over there, but that is certainly, you know, leaving the referendum issues to one side. I mean, I think stuff like that does need to be heard, certainly in Ireland.
So when Gabe and Richard, when you were both coming to this play, what were your kind of first impressions when you first got it through in the post or email, as we live in a modern world? What were your kind of first impressions, and how have those adapted and changed as you've gotten to know your characters better and worked more closely on the play?
She's a fantastic character he's written, because of her. She's a lot of different personalities in the one person, I think. And that she's a child, she's childish, she's then inspirational, she's then, you know, petty, or whatever. You know, she's a lot of different people, and she's heavily pregnant as well, which is, you know, added into the mix in it. And so she's ugly as well when she wants to be, but also at the same time inspirational. And I thought a lot about, actually it was Bill Clinton, who it reminded me of, just because people said that when Bill Clinton was on walkabout with the people, he would be physically exhausted by the end of it. He was so drained. I feel your pain. He really, really did mean it. But then would go home and have a possible relationship with an intern. You know, like that. Who are these people? Are fascinating people. You know, there are a lot of people in the one person, I think. And so she that's what I think is a gift of a part in that way. But in terms of real people, there was no current politician that we thought of. The only person that came up in rehearsals was Margot MacDonald. And I did look at a speech of Margot's, but that was the only politician that
I think John had mentioned Mo Molam as well as
yes.
being somebody that...
Difficult women.
strong women.
Strong, difficult women.
Strong women.
And I mean, Mark's role changed a lot for me in the first couple of days of rehearsals. I remember the early conversations we had about who is he? Like, where does he come from? What's his job? You know, his job was never really referred to. He's just this mysterious advisor that appears.
They've got in to tether her, you know, the wolf.
And from what I gather in the initial shorter version, he was maybe more of a lackey, more of a policy advisor, that kind of thing. And over the weeks of rehearsals, I think he became much more Machiavellian, and which throws her slightly, you know, when he comes in and she sees him as just another advisor, and the way in which he's able to twist her mind. So, I mean, it's been fun doing that, because I think Mark Henderson goes on an unbelievable journey in a very short space of time in this play, and from an acting perspective, that's fascinating to get your teeth into, you know. It's been brilliant.
Amazing. So when we've touched on this a little bit, but if you think people are looking back in this play in the future, as it's being performed now in this time and then moving forward, how do you think this play will kind of be remembered, and how do you think it might go into being something different in the future?
And somebody said to me, it's a newspaper journalism theatre, because it's so current. But John wrote this last year, which I think is very interesting as well. I mean, it was last September.
Yeah.
So there is obviously the immediacy question.
I think, I mean, the impact, as I was saying before, that it's going to have on what Northern Ireland, Wales and England want in terms of devolved power. The issues that I heard Nigel Farage talking today about, Scottish MPs voting on English matters and that kind of thing. You know, the thing is changing so fast on a daily basis that I have no idea at all of what this play could mean in a few years' time. But
it's ultimately as well about two characters. Yeah. So as you were saying, but apart from the drama, it's a cat and mouse game of two. Yeah,
we talked a lot about the West Wing and the thick of it and the obvious, televisual references. And I think that, even if you weren't politically minded or interested in the referendum, you could still come and watch a great piece of drama about two people just fighting it out.
And there's something about, and there was quite a lot about this on Twitter, the response to seeing a woman, a heavily pregnant woman, a powerful woman, and a woman, late 30s, early 40s on stage, that those roles, there's not millions of them. And for a lot of people coming to see it, that was quite a moment for them to see a woman really take centre stage and be all those things, ugly and childish and fantastic and inspirational and broken and powerful. And although it's a short play, I think for both of you to go on that, both characters go on such a complete journey, but there was something about that image even that a lot of people, the posters were stolen when they first went up. So they were obviously kind of, I don't know, a powerful message maybe.
It's the first time I've ever shared a stage with a heavily pregnant woman, which has brought its own challenges, just in terms of how you behave around someone like that, Mark is not a guy who is in any way, interested in marriage and kids, I don't think.
Yeah.
So to share the stage with someone like that, it becomes pretty sparky.
We were in rehearsal the day when the Daily Mail published all of Cameron's all the Cameron's babes, or whatever, the Cameron's chicks, or whatever, and they took pictures of them all coming into 10 Downing Street, all the female new cabinet members, and commented on their shoes, handbags, who had the best haircut, who was wearing makeup, and so it's just that that particular gaze or lens that's on women in the public eye, let alone politicians at this time, just felt
Minister's hair, 15 minutes.
And I think that's what's so lovely about the play, is that it really does play between those two political kind of capital P, small p, in that with both of these characters, like Fiona articulates at one point, she just wants to do what's right. And I think that was really interesting, having seen this play a number of times and being in an audience where everyone's just voted and has made a decision and has hopefully just done what they hope is right. I think it was really interesting sitting in that audience tonight and at certain points hearing those little intakes of breath, or I think that was a lovely part of what the play is. And did, as an audience, do you think that kind of, did that feel like something that was pertinent this evening as well? So I think this would be a good time to kind of open it up and see if anyone has any questions or any comments on anything that we've discussed before. Hand right up, I love it.
Early on, it's easy to imagine as we watch the play that passionate no campers are not going to like this play a lot. Passionate yes campers are not going to like this play a lot. And what do you think about the suggestion that it comes off as cynical about politics and politicians in a healthy kind of way? That is to say, beware if you become too passionate and get sucked in. Basically, all politicians are the same everywhere. They're con artists, they're wheelers and dealers, they're manipulators, they'll cheat you. I mean, I took that away, but maybe I'm out of line. Maybe that's not. So that way it could live forever. In some ways it's irrelevant if it's about the referendum. It could be about politics, intense politics anywhere.
I think you're right.
There was a lady who came to see the show in London, and she was very unique in her opinion. She said she found it deeply depressing by the end, in the way that you're describing, that it's just one big vicious circle, that nothing ever gets resolved, nothing changes. Now, most people, I don't think, picked up on that. They enjoy the comedy of it, the satire and all of that, but I always thought that it's almost like Fiona and Mark kind of formed their own political party. By the end of it, they've kind of washed their hands of the lot of them, and they're left kind of afloat.
And people, there's been a lot of people, audience members, who've said, we want to know what happens next. We need the second half.
Yes.
We need to, because that's maybe the answer to the question, if it, depending on what she says. If she goes and speaks her heart, or whether she goes and toes the party line, and that's maybe the answer, that it, depending on what she does, will be the comment on politics and the nature of politics, and is it a never-ending circle of cynicism, and can you trust anybody? But hey,
he's a Northern Irish writer, he's going to be cynical at heart.
but it ends with a question, doesn't it? What are you going to say? He doesn't know what she's going to say. I don't know.
I think she's going to say the fjords.
And then they're both going to lose their jobs. Or maybe not.
do you have any other questions from the audience at all, or any comments? Or anyone? Hello.
Richard, you said that it was about two gays fighting it out and about someone being Machiavellian, and I kind of saw it like a seduction.
Yeah.
Like Mark had come into this expecting to, do the right thing for his party.
Yeah.
And in the end, Fiona had said something incredibly racist to him, and he would flip back. And I'm Northern Irish as well. If someone said to me, I go, I know you're right. We do that every day. But he flips out and he goes crazy, and then he joins her, and it's almost like it's like he wanted to do that the whole time. And she just gave him that wee push. And I didn't mean like a romantic seduction, but more like political.
Well, look, I very much think that he's been harbouring an awful lot of anger that he's never released, that he hasn't been able to. And he's left Northern Ireland looking for a fresh start, a confident start in Scottish politics. But there's something in him that he's never let go of. And it's interesting you use the word seduction, because he comes in thinking it's going to be easy. But what pushes his buttons and what he loves, I think, as a political manipulator is the game. He loves that idea of someone confronting him and what he can challenge that person with. And he's never met anyone like her before. And what he faces in this woman is his greatest challenge to date. And the climax of that being that somehow or other in this short space of time, she is able to suck that out of him. She's able to dig into him and discover that real emotional part of his past, And so, it's not a sexual thing. It's a respect. A respect, yeah, definitely, yeah.
And it is a man and a woman in an enclosed space, and there's an hour to save the world kind of thing, isn't there? Yeah. And certainly earlier on in rehearsals, we talked about flirting and kind of,
Yeah, there was a romantic comedy version.
Yeah.
I was convinced it was like, he should give her the thistle. And then it just
he's going to look after that baby.
She's going to call it Mom. And that was a lot. We talked about it a lot, but it's when the play was finally fully formed that you're right. It was about respect, and Orla had mentioned early on in rehearsals as well. They're both very good at what they do, so it's a game of, oh right, I see you and I top you, and now I top you, and so that's a kind of that was good fun. But I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience at all? Oh, hello.
I really like the line about geography when he says that geography is older than history, and I like the comparison later on. Can I ask why do you think the writer chose to? Because I would have thought history would be the obvious thing. Why do you think he used geography?
Geology. Yeah. But you're right. No, absolutely.
Something about just the power of place, isn't there, in land, that then connects to the fields later on, which he leaves us with an image rather than a political kind of mission statement or belief system. And he talks about the earth. And I remember John talking about this is all, to go back to the image of the field, that the surface spray, there's these waves and there's surface spray, but you go down, 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 and what is eternal? There's stillness and there's depth. And we can be close to each other, and yet we're very far apart. So he's kind of reaching for something that's hard. I'm not being very articulate, but he leaves us with an image that is to do with place and land and geography and ancient, eternal kind of.
Eternal, yeah.
I think initially when he mentions that it's a Northern Irish thing, it's the idea that somehow or other we're only as old as our history, the bad old days, the troubles, all of that, and that he's gone to university and studied something that goes beyond that, because that's what he believes in.
But it's interesting you pick up on it, because for the composer in the show, albeit that the music is not really heavily featured as in some shows, but he took all his sort of inspiration from plates, tectonic plates, everything to do with geology. So the noise at the beginning that you hear when the lights go down and you can hear the buzzer, he's put stuff in there of kind of volcanic stuff.
Tectonic, it's like shifts and creaks and movement beneath. But there's something Yeah, something about this is just a moment in time, and time is...
Yeah, which is why it's raised.
It's kind of comforting, but...
And the lighting designer has got the blue underneath it as well. I think that was referencing it. So it was all kind of, they think very long and hard about this. And so, but it's all tied up for them, for the creative team as well.
It's really good.
Designer and lighting designer.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you. And we're almost just about out of time, so is there any final questions? Thank you so much, you're being really helpful. Over here, hello. Hi. Yes, you.
Like, obviously the play is a work of fiction, and every time you've done it before you've been aware of that, but obviously until the wee hours of this morning, an independent Scotland was something that was possible, and that must have always been on your mind. So emotionally, not necessarily in terms of your performance, but how different did it feel coming on tonight, and how different do you think it would have felt coming on stage in what would be an independent Scotland tonight?
Good question.
A great question. Again, you're rehearsed, so this play should always be what you saw tonight. You know, it's audience reaction that changes because we're directed. But absolutely, you're absolutely right.
I mean, there was a definite. I thought there was a different feel to the audience tonight than inevitably there was last night when we did it. Last night there was a real charged atmosphere. Oh, what could happen? What could happen either way?
I mean, every night this week, Tuesday they were kind of woohoo. Then by Wednesday it was like it was a party. They were stomping, clapping after lines because it was the anticipation. And then last night was tense and emotional, and it was
quite
very
distracted. It was sort of quite hard to kind of focus, I think.
You know, and then tonight was sort of, I don't know, it was quite freeing in a way because there's been a lot of kind of, obviously the build-up's been so extensive.
There are always lines that take on a different significance, I guess, in that sense. You know, when Mark talks about Northern Ireland, and you know, post-referendum, he describes Northern Ireland as being mutually assured dysfunction, is how he describes it, which for me kind of rung out tonight when I was saying it, and the whole Fjord's speech at the end, you know, that regardless had it been a yes or a no, what that signifies.
Also,
you know,
people didn't vote the way they did to be treated like that. Landed tonight in a completely new way. Because they've been promised things or not, you know, that suddenly was like, well, that's a whole new life for that line, you know, and that's really fascinating, and it's a real tribute to John.
And this is John's first play that he's written, first professional play since he's been in Scotland. He's been in Scotland for 8 years. He's written a couple of plays in Northern Ireland, smaller plays, but this is his first big, so I just would second that he's done fantastic work. But you did say that tonight felt... Because I think what you're getting at is how it feels for them,
a bunch
as human beings.
Suddenly she's crying she's a very emotional person. She's also really hormonal, so she is a very emotional person anyway, I think. But I was like, oh, I'm leaking. A bunch of fearty. Suddenly that had a whole new resonance and yeah, I don't know. You know, it was all just you're absolutely right.
Is there somebody up there?
Yes.
Do you want to leave anyone?
Hiya.
So obviously you've been talking about how it's been changing over like the time period of the referendum. So what for you was the biggest change, like in comparison to at the very start of the run in comparison to yesterday to today? Like what do you think has been the biggest shift in the dynamics of the audience and like with the lines you're saying?
I think that when the polls started to predict a yes, we were in London at the time. Everywhere you went, papers covered in stories, and a real sense of that, of what was going to happen. You know, that was definitely the moment.
Stricken, a kind of stricken audience, and after it felt like question time in the bar every night because you were having to explain why it was happening, what was happening. You know.
Tell them about the BBC when they came to talk to you.
Yeah. They did an interview and they filmed bits of it for the news in London, and then they said to Richard, "Come in." They said to both, "Can you come interview you?" And Richard, and then the guy said, "Oh, do you live in Belfast?" And Richard said, "Yes." And he said, I don't think your voice is relevant for this interview.
Yeah, and I said to him,
And I
well,
went,
half
and
of
that's
this play
the whole
is half of this
thing.
play is about Northern Ireland. It's, you know, the two characters, one of them is Northern Irish. I think you're going to find that it's going to be relevant.
But apart from that, it's like, we don't need to hear about that. And you're like, but that's been the whole thing.
And then we
That's why
proceeded then to do
people-
like a vox pop thing with the guy, and it was all, you know, so what do you think a London audience are going to think? But what about London, London, continually? And I just kept saying to him, well, I mean, I think all of us, London and anyone else in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, are going to be hit by this, you know.
Yeah.
No, but what about London?
But that was a biggie. That definitely was a biggie. But also, even in the first few weeks, it was 3 weeks at the festival, so the first debate happened, and that was not so good for Salmond. So suddenly, Project Fear got last. Plan B suddenly had a whole life of its own.
That's right, yeah.
I finally got a fucking Plan B. So every time there was a debate, certain lines just suddenly shot up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, every time there was a major kind of incident. But yeah, no, the poll saying that they were pipping them, they were really shocked in London and really quite upset, and understandably. And I felt like a lot of the people, like it was a post-show discussion like this, they hadn't had a chance to talk about it, that they hadn't been consulted, and there was also so many people wanted to talk, and I thought, you've not had a voice, you know, or because you didn't know about it. I know you could say, oh well, they should have known, but you know, you got to read a paper and find out. And it felt like they weren't given the information. You know.
So it's been quite maybe not unique because lots of theatre does it, but it's been a very specific job, if you like, that as well as the play and the theatre and the acting of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also been this kind of responsibility to the to the political
To
time
both
that it
sides
is.
of
There's
the
a lot of
argument.
talking to the audience afterwards. There's a lot of conversations that are ignited and
Yeah.
fueled, and a lot of thinking and a lot of connection, you know, to the newspaper, to the news, that we've
Yeah.
definitely been plugged in and are being plugged into as a company because of the time that it is. That is quite unique anyway. So far
Yeah,
for me,
definitely,
that
and
it's
for
been so-
both, that's been the good.
Yeah.
That was the good thing for both
Yeah.
sides of the argument, you know.
But I hope that there is a, you know, a timelessness to it as well in terms of how we see things proceeding. You know, I think there's so much in it that it's not just about the referendum; it's about so many other things. You know.
Brilliant. Any more for any more? Do we have any final questions? Hello, hiya.
Hi, I was 17 and I was really grateful to have been given a vote this year in the referendum. And I'd just like to say, I thought it was fantastic to see not just the stereotypical politician on stage, to see the suit and Neil, but also see the strong, difficult, as you say, woman. So being a teenager, not being expected to be interested in politics, I think, it resonated with me, having, relating to, yes, I'm not a stereotypical view of politics today, but that doesn't mean my views are any less important.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed seeing that.
Thank you.
It's really exciting. Thank you very much.
Well done on voting at 17. That's
Yeah.
a big decision. Not easy.
Yeah. It's brilliant as well that we do have quite a few first-time voters within our audience tonight, so that's really exciting that you guys have chosen to come along, and really brilliant to kind of bring into the dynamic. Final question.
It's not actually a question, I just want to do another thank you. I'm a passionate yes voter, and I still will be a passionate yes voter. I was lucky enough or unlucky enough to be at the count last night, and it was awful. It's up there as one of the worst nights of my life. But I would just like to say that this has given me a little bit of perspective. Thank you.
So how did parts of it sit with you tonight then, in terms of
It was, I mean, there's lots of stories I could tell. Weirdness about it all. One of the worst things has got to be looking at the tables with the votes. So you've got the piles of votes, and you see the no sign getting bigger and bigger, and the yes there, and you're looking at it, and it's Edinburgh Leith, and it's North Edinburgh, and you're thinking, what?
Yeah.
Oh, anyway.
Well, I'm glad we gave you a wee bit of hope.
I'm glad you got a lift.
I really didn't come tonight because I was
so I'm
just
gonna,
right.
I know, yeah.
That's been, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for coming along and choosing to be part of our post-show discussion. It's really brilliant for us at the Traverse. We love to make work that starts conversations and discussions, so this is really exciting for us to have you here. Come back, have more chat.